A truly masculine man understands that his value is not up for negotiation. He doesn't need to chase, beg, or convince anyone of his worth. His presence speaks for itself. When he steps into a room, when he speaks, when he commits, there's power behind it because it's backed by self-respect. And that's exactly why he doesn't chase. He knows that anything requiring him to abandon his self-worth just to be seen or accepted isn't worth having in the first place. Chasing often comes from a place of lack, of needing to prove something, to be wanted, to be chosen, to feel validated. But a man who is in full possession of his masculinity doesn't operate from that mindset. He doesn't need to be chosen because he's already chosen himself. He's already defined who he is, what he wants, and what he stands for. And that kind of man doesn't move in desperation. He moves in alignment. When a man chases, he's placing someone else's value above his own. He's saying, your presence in my life is more important than the boundaries I've built or the peace I've earned. That's not strength. That's submission to uncertainty, to approval, seeking to emotional instability. A masculine man knows that love, respect, and connection should never come at the cost of self-respect. If it does, it's no longer love that's compromise, and he doesn't compromise his core. So instead of chasing, he observes. He sees when energy shifts, when interest fades, when words no longer align with actions. And instead of clinging harder or trying to convince someone to stay, he lets go quietly, confidently. That's the strength in his disappearance, not as a manipulation tactic, not as punishment, but as a reflection of his standards. He does not fight to stay in spaces where he's clearly being shown the door, whether it's a relationship, a friendship, or even a business deal. He walks away because he knows what he brings to the table, and if someone can't see it, he won't force them to. He simply removes himself and lets his absence do the talking, because when a man respects himself, he knows he doesn't need to chase anything that's truly meant for him. He understands that what aligns with his life will naturally flow toward him, not require him to lose himself in the process of obtaining it. At the end of the day, self-respect isn't just something he holds, it's something he lives. And that's why a masculine man doesn't chase. He disappears. Disappearing isn't a sign of weakness. It's a demonstration of control. A masculine man doesn't vanish to escape conflict or run from responsibility. He disappears because he refuses to entertain situations that compromise his inner peace. There's a difference between silence that's scared and silence that's powerful. The masculine man knows the difference, and he uses it wisely. He doesn't announce his boundaries, he enforces them by removing himself the moment they're crossed. Society often tells men that strength is loud, aggressive, and confrontational, but real strength is restraint. It's knowing you have the power to argue, to chase, to demand answers, and choosing not to, not because you're afraid, but because you've mastered your emotions. A masculine man isn't moved by chaos, he's moved by clarity. And when that clarity shows him that someone doesn't value his presence, his silence becomes louder than any explanation could ever be. Disappearing is not about playing games. It's not a strategy to get someone back or a test to see who notices. That's immature. That's ego-driven. A real man disappears not to teach someone a lesson, but to honor what he's already learned. He's seen enough, he's felt enough, and he's done enough. At that point, he doesn't need to explain himself. His absence becomes the statement, his distance becomes the boundary, his lack of response becomes his closure. This isn't avoidance, it's self-respect in motion, it's choosing solitude over drama. It's recognizing when something is no longer aligned and choosing to walk away instead of wasting time proving your point to someone who's not even trying to understand you. The masculine man knows that energy is currency. And if something keeps draining him, no matter how much he once cared, he'll disappear to protect what he's built internally. Peace, purpose, presence, that's the thing. Masculine men don't need closure. They don't need long conversations to justify their worth. If someone can't see it, they step back, not out of bitterness but out of balance. He doesn't fight for a seat at a table that he was clearly never meant to sit at. Instead, he builds his own table and keeps it sacred. He protects his space like he protects his purpose, without apology. So when a masculine man disappears, understand this: it wasn't random, it wasn't emotional. It was calculated, it was clear, and it was necessary. His peace cost him too much to risk it on someone who can't appreciate consistency, honesty, or effort. His silence is not emptiness, it's full of standards. His absence is not punishment, it's a response, not the one you expected, but the one you earned, and that's why masculine men don't chase, they disappear. Emotional discipline is one of the sharpest weapons a masculine man carries. It's not that he doesn't feel, it's that he refuses to be ruled by what he feels. There's a quiet strength in staying calm when everything inside wants to react. There's power in being able to look someone in the eye and say nothing, not because you don't care, but because you've already made peace with walking away. That's what emotional discipline looks like. It's not loud. It doesn't need validation. It doesn't need to win the argument. It knows when to speak, when to stand firm, and when to disappear entirely. A man who chases is often reacting. He's reacting to rejection, to confusion, to emotional highs and lows. He's trying to fix, to persuade, to prove, but a masculine man doesn't move like that. He's not in the business of convincing anyone to stay. If someone is playing games, pulling away, or creating emotional instability, he doesn't meet them at that level. He removes himself from the table. That removal is not an act of weakness. It's emotional intelligence at work. He knows his presence is valuable, and he refuses to invest it where emotional chaos is the norm. You see, the world constantly tries to bait men into emotional reactivity, to chase when they're ignored, to argue when they're disrespected, to prove themselves when they're doubted. But the masculine man doesn't bite the bait. He knows that his ability to stay centered, composed, and intentional is what truly separates him. He's not emotionally detached, he's emotionally grounded. He feels, but he doesn't spiral. He loves, but he doesn't beg. He listens, but he doesn't absorb disrespect. Disappearing isn't about shutting down, it's about choosing peace over performance. It's about refusing to let someone else pull you out of character. The masculine man doesn't chase because chasing often leads to emotional volatility, and he's worked too hard to be led by anything but purpose and principle. If a situation threatens his inner stability, he steps away, not out of fear, but out of discipline, and that's the difference between a man who's masculine and one who's reactive. The masculine man responds with intention, not emotion. He knows what triggers him, and more importantly, he knows when to disengage before things escalate. That's why he disappears, not because he's cold, but because he values control over chaos. He protects his energy like he protects his legacy, with fierce precision. So when you see a man disappear instead of chasing, know that it's not indifference, it's maturity. It's the result of emotional discipline cultivated over time. He doesn't run, he doesn't hide. He simply chooses not to give his energy to situations that require him to become someone he no longer is, and that's why masculine men don't chase, they disappear. Masculine men move with purpose, not impulse. They don't have time to chase what's running away because they're too focused on what they're building. Their identity isn't wrapped in being chosen, it's wrapped in fulfilling their mission. That's the difference. A man who's unsure of himself will chase distractions, validation, and affection from people who are undecided about him. But a man rooted in purpose doesn't need to chase, he attracts, he aligns, he builds. And if someone starts playing games, withdrawing attention, or testing his worth, he doesn't chase. He exits quickly, cleanly, and without explanation. The masculine man's direction in life is forward. He wakes up with intention. He's not scrolling through his phone hoping someone texts back, analyzing mixed signals, or trying to decode inconsistency. He doesn't make time for uncertainty because his life has structure. He's focused on his health, his vision, his craft, his character, and when someone enters his world, they're either adding to that momentum or interrupting it. If it's the latter, he doesn't negotiate with it, he disappears. Chasing someone who is unsure is the opposite of purpose. It's distraction dressed up as desire. A masculine man sees through that. He knows that constantly needing to prove his worth to someone who's unclear about him is energy lost from the things that actually matter. He understands that not everyone will understand his rhythm, and that's okay. He's not here to convince, he's here to lead, and anyone who truly values that won't need to be chased. They'll meet him where he is. There's a calm that comes with this mindset. He doesn't force conversations that don't flow. He doesn't beg for love that's hot one day and cold the next. And he definitely doesn't chase people who respond with silence, games, or passive aggression. Instead, he pays attention, he reads energy, and when that energy is inconsistent, he makes a quiet but powerful decision to remove himself. The power in this isn't just about walking away, it's about staying loyal to his direction. The masculine man knows that his time is a non-renewable resource. He doesn't give it freely to people who can't see the value in it. He doesn't chase because he doesn't need to. His life is already in motion. His goals are already clear. If someone wants to be part of that, they're welcome. But if they require pursuit, he sees it as a distraction, not a destination. Chasing is what boys do when they don't know who they are yet. Disappearing is what men do when they know exactly who they are and what they're here to do. So he doesn't get caught up in the noise, he keeps moving, he stays focused, and if someone chooses to fall out of alignment with that, he doesn't argue, he disappears. And that's why masculine men don't chase, they disappear. Presence isn't always about being seen. Sometimes the loudest message a man can send is through his absence. A masculine man doesn't chase attention, and he certainly doesn't beg for it. He understands that real presence is felt, not forced. That's why when he disappears, it hits different. It's not about being petty or playing power games. It's because his absence holds weight. It creates space that makes others notice what they took for granted. He doesn't need to remind anyone of his worth. Removal does that for him. A man who's grounded in himself knows that presence isn't measured by how often he shows up. When he's disrespected, it's measured by how quickly he walks away when he is. He doesn't make a scene, he doesn't raise his voice, he doesn't explain his silence. Instead, he lets the emptiness speak, and in a world full of noise, silence becomes the loudest reminder of who he is. It commands reflection, it causes others to pause, because when a man who showed up with consistency suddenly vanishes without fuss, that absence echoes. The masculine man never overextends himself to prove he's worthy of being kept around. If someone doesn't recognize his energy, his loyalty, his consistency, he doesn't chase to correct that, he just stops showing up, because presence isn't just about physical space, it's emotional investment. It's support, it's attentiveness, and when that's overlooked or undervalued, he knows better than to keep pouring into a cracked cup. He doesn't need to withdraw with bitterness, he simply disappears with peace. There's something powerful about a man who doesn't need to be loud to be remembered. He doesn't beg for second chances or explanations. He leaves room for people to realize the difference between his energy and the chaos they chose instead. And often, it's only when he's gone that the impact is fully understood. That's not manipulation, it's just reality. When you bring real value, your absence reveals what your presence was doing all along. This is why he doesn't chase, because he doesn't need to. The spaces he steps into are elevated by his character, not his ego, and when he leaves, he takes that energy with him. He knows that presence is a privilege, not a promise. And once he feels it's no longer appreciated, he has no issue pulling it back, quietly, calmly, completely. He's not looking for applause, attention, or reassurance. He's looking for alignment, and if that's missing, he won't beg for it. He'll remove himself from the equation altogether. That absence becomes a mirror for others to see what they didn't value until it was gone. Because real presence has power, and only those who move with intention understand how powerful disappearing can truly be. And that's why masculine men don't chase, they disappear. A masculine man doesn't disappear out of ego, he disappears out of principle. There's a big difference between walking away because your pride is hurt and walking away because your standards are being ignored. The masculine man doesn't move out of spite, he moves out of clarity. He knows exactly what he stands for, and more importantly, what he refuses to stand in. If a situation starts demanding that he shrink himself, question his worth, or constantly prove his value, he doesn't argue, he exits. Not to punish, but to protect, not to manipulate, but to maintain alignment with himself. Ego says, they'll miss me. Principle says, this no longer honors me. A man who is secure in himself knows the difference. He doesn't use silence to control others. He doesn't weaponize distance. He simply understands that if something requires him to abandon his values, it's not for him, and he won't chase it, explain himself endlessly, or force it to fit. He'll simply remove himself, because that's what self-respect looks like in action. Disappearing isn't about winning. It's not about proving anything to anyone else. It's about staying loyal to your own sense of truth. The masculine man understands that when a space becomes draining, when energy shifts, or when someone begins to test how far they can push before he reacts, his best move is to not play the game at all. Or not out of weakness, but out of wisdom. He knows the second he starts chasing what isn't flowing, he starts betraying his own standards, and that's a price he's unwilling to pay. He's not disappearing to teach a lesson. He's disappearing because he's learned one. When someone can't meet him with respect, consistency, and honesty, he doesn't stick around trying to change them. He honors the disconnect and lets go. It's not cold, it's conscious. It's not heartless, it's healthy, because the man who's truly masculine isn't interested in trying to force connection where there's none, or tolerance where there should be appreciation. That's what makes him powerful. His ability to say nothing but communicate everything through action. His ability to remove himself without drama. His ability to uphold his standards without needing to shout about them. People often mistake his silence for indifference, but they don't realize how much strength it takes to walk away from what you once wanted, simply because it no longer aligns with what you deserve. He knows his worth doesn't come from how loud he fights to stay. It comes from how calmly he chooses to go when something no longer reflects the life he's building. And that's what sets him apart. His decisions aren't driven by ego or emotion. They're rooted in principle, guided by clarity, and carried out with discipline. And that's why masculine men don't chase, they disappear.